Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the earthquake detector. In 132 AD, a man named Zhang Hen was able to create the first earthquake detector called the seismoscope. Far ahead of its time, this creation was incredibly accurate and is actually comparable in efficiency to those that we use now. Apparently, in 138, this tool detected an earthquake that was a ways away, and at the time nobody believed it and dismissed the warning. A few days later, a messenger arrived and asked for help, which confirmed that this thing really did accurately detect an earthquake and where it was coming from. Researchers still aren't sure exactly how it works, which is so crazy, but I guess some things are just meant to be a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Gangkar Puensum. This mountain is the largest mountain that has been unclimbed by humans and stands at a height of 7,570 meters or 24,836 feet. Studies and measurements of this mountain started 100 years ago in 1922, but it wasn't until much more recently that we began to acquire actually accurate details about it. The name of the mountain means White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, which becomes an important part of why this mountain remains unclimbed. In 1983, the mountain became open for mountaineering, but between 1985 and 1986, there were 4 separate expeditions who tried to summit it and failed. Part of the reason why these expeditions failed were because there were disputes on the location and there was just inaccurate information, so the first group who tried to summit it couldn't even find the mountain at all. In 1994, the climbing of mountains in Bhutan higher than 6,000 meters became prohibited due to spiritual beliefs, and in 2003, mountaineering became prohibited entirely. This is why the mountain remains unsummited, and while I'm sure it would be an amazing expedition for climbers, who knows what is going on up there in terms of ecology due to it being left alone. In our number 8 spot today, we have the ancient seabed. A seabed that was once located at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean was found buried hundreds of miles beneath China. This slab of rock once found its home at the top of the lithosphere, which is the outermost layer of the Earth. How did it get hundreds of miles below China? Well, it got pushed down by a neighboring tectonic plate in what is called a subduction event. This discovery was so notable because scientists had never detected a subduction event so deep within the surface of the planet. When they found this rock slab, it was still continuing its descent towards the mantle of the Earth. I wonder if one day it will come back to the surface again. In our number 7 spot today, we have a gibbon skull. Gibbons are a type of ape that are often characterized by their swinging ability coupled with their loud, bright calls, and the 8th century Chinese poet Li Bai described their voices as they swung past the Yangtze River. But here's the thing. Today, there are no gibbons that live anywhere near the river. Also, the gibbons that exist now have different fur patterns from the ones that are often depicted in classical Chinese paintings. This has led experts to believe that there must have been another kind of gibbon that has now vanished, and physical evidence of this gibbon might have turned up in the most unexpected place. A tomb. This tomb, which was built for the grandmother of the first emperor of China nearly 2,300 years ago, contained a skull and a jawbone so distinct that scientists believed they must have belonged to a member of this now extinct gibbon genus. Many surviving gibbon species are now facing extinction, so it is likely that there were others in the past who unfortunately faced the same kind of fate. In our number 6 spot today, we have the green gel. This is a discovery that was made by the U-22 rover, which is currently exploring our wonderful moon. On Lunar Day 8 last year, which began on July 25th, the rover was doing its thing, finding its way through an area that was filled with a bunch of small impact craters. On July 28th, as the team here on Earth was preparing to power down the rover for its little midday nap, which is meant to protect the machine from high temperatures and radiation from the sun, one member of the team was checking over some images that were taken by the rover's main camera, and they spotted a small crater that seemed like it contained some sort of material that had a color and a sort of luster that was significantly different from the lunar area surrounding it. The team then changed the plans they had for the rover and decided that instead of going west, which was next on the schedule, they would instead take a little detour to check out this mystery material. The rover carefully made its way over to the crater and examined it with both its visible and near-infrared spectrometer, which is a thing that detects lights that are scattered or reflected off of a material, which helps to reveal what they're made up of. For a while, no one knew exactly what the substance was, and it was only being described as being gel-like and being a weird color, but after almost a year of more research, it was finally identified. It's rock. More specifically, rock that was melted together, most likely in the heat of impact from a meteorite. It's insane that something like that created a dark green, glistening impact melt, but it's also very cool. I'm just glad that this is one mystery that we got to the bottom of. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Gobi Desert structure. This is one discovery that had conspiracy theorists' minds absolutely swirling. About a decade ago, someone was searching through some Google Maps images when they found a mysterious array of structures and patterns that appeared to be etched into the surface of the Gobi Desert, which is, of course, located in China. The structures are reminiscent of geoliths, but they're seemingly much more modern and newly created. The speculation of what this structure could be or why it was created went wild, with people saying that they were street maps of American cities or messages either to or from some sort of extraterrestrials. The list of bizarre theories just goes on. While this is still sort of conspiracy sounding, this is likely the most reasonable explanation for what these structures are, and that is that these structures are used to help calibrate China's spy and radar satellites. To be fair, this does make a lot of sense, and I don't have any other ideas on what it could be for, so. In our number 4 spot today, we have the DROUGHTS. Ancient drawings and writings were found covering the walls of the Diyu cave, which is located in central China, and a lot of them detail different droughts and such that were experienced during their time of their writing. According to these drawings, people would come to the cave for either water or to pray for rain in times of drought. The writings reveal some of the horrors that the people of the time experienced while going through these periods of drought, including severe starvation, social instability, and conflict between government and citizens. While these cave writings show us a difficult time in history, researchers say that the stalagmites that were also found in the cave might show a grim prediction for the future. Since these are formed by dripping water and they form sort of rings, like how trees do, and these rings can give us insights into different things. Based on the patterns of these rings, scientists were able to corroborate the things that the cave writings were saying, but they were also able to make a grim prediction for the future, which is that unfortunately the region may again see one of these catastrophic droughts, this time in the late 2030s. In our number 3 spot today, we have the ruins. Taking over our number 3 spot today, we have the most recent discovery on this list. While archaeologists were digging at one of the most important archaeological sites in China just earlier this year, they found a bronze altar as well as a dragon with a pig's nose, among many other things, in a couple of the sacrificial pits that are seen at this site. In fact, they said the findings were made in sacrificial pits 7 and 8, to which I have to ask, how many are there? Another highlight of the new finds was a bronze box with a tortoise-shaped lid. Inside, this box contained jade artifacts, and even traces of silk fabric were found around it. These finds are so astonishing because every little piece gives us so much insight into the buried secrets of the ancient Chinese civilization. In our number 2 spot today, we have an ancient mystery. While excavating a tomb in China, the team discovered the skeleton of a young man that was riddled with wounds, giving clues as to how he died. The man is estimated to have been about 25 years old at the time of his death, and it is thought that he was harmed and then thrown into the tomb raider's shaft while still alive, which is absolutely gruesome. It is believed that this crime took place between 640 and 680 AD. It appears as though he wasn't a thief because the shaft had begun to be refilled with soil by the time of his death, so we really aren't sure why this young man met this cruel fate. As a true crime enthusiast myself, this is absolutely fascinating, and I wish we could find some answers to bring this guy's story full circle, but sometimes these things are just destined to stay a secret. In our number 1 spot today, we have the palace. Archaeologists and researchers were certainly baffled a few years ago when they were digging beneath the foundation of the Lifang Pagoda, which sits on Lifang Mountain. Well, digging isn't exactly the right word. To be honest, there was a huge stone or boulder that weighed over 1,500 pounds that was lifted away, which then revealed a stone tablet. Once this tablet was lifted, it revealed a huge underground palace. Inside this palace, researchers found many hidden treasures that included a Buddhist statue, bronze mirrors, coins, and there was also a rusty iron case that was found during the initial discovery, which researchers believe held many relics. The pagoda that sat on top of this hidden palace was first completed in 976 AD, so it is thought that this area remained untouched from at least then until its modern discovery.
Number 10. Dragon of Death. We all know that millions of years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth before they became extinct. Scientists are constantly working to put together the fossils and remains that they have found and discover new species. One of the ones that was discovered recently has been described as the Dragon of Death. It was a flying reptile like a pterodactyl that is described as having been the size of a bus. Fully extended, its wings measured 30 feet from one tip to the other, and they were apparently as tall as giraffes. The leader on the project said that its size defies the limits of our biological understanding. The remains were discovered in the mountains of Argentina, and the specimen is apparently around 86 million years old, being preserved within the rocks. It's incredible to think of the sheer size of some species of dinosaurs and to imagine them compared to ourselves. With all the talk of scientists wanting to bring certain animal species back from extinction, it may not be long until we have a real-life Jurassic Park. Number 9. Haunted idols. Burial sites often fall victim to grave robberies, things being stolen from the dead and defenseless. In May of this year, a group stole 16 statues from a 300-year-old temple, but what they stole caused them to regret their decision. After less than a week, 14 of the 16 stolen statues reappeared on the doorstep of the temple's chief priest, returned in fine condition. The thieves left a letter of confession for stealing the statues and said that they were returning them because they felt they had become cursed by the idols. The note said, "We have not been able to sleep, eat, and live peacefully. We are fed up with the scary dreams and are returning your valuables." Having the idols around seemed to put a haunted curse on the thieves, though we can only guess whether the statues were totally haunted or were simply punishing the thieves for their actions. Reportedly, cursed objects are nothing new and pop up all over the place, so it's probably best if you just keep your hands to yourself. Number 8. Skeleton. When people pass away, they are often remembered fondly by their family and descendants, arranging the funeral and getting their affairs in order. So what happens when no one is around to even know that someone has passed away? When they have no close family or friends who will notice that they've stopped answering their messages? Well, early this year, a team of construction workers in New York spotted something strange through a window. They saw what they believed to be a human skeleton, and it turns out that it was. It was a 54-year-old woman who had been living in the apartment when she died of currently undetermined causes. The woman's sisters had tried to come into contact with her, but had only filled out a missing persons report, not knowing that she was still inside her home. It's believed by doctors that the woman had been dead for almost 2 years before being discovered, her body decomposing inside the home. Number 7. Sea creature. With around 80% of the ocean still unexplored, we can only leave it up to our imaginations to wonder what sort of creatures might be living in the deep dark depths. Even the sea creatures that we are aware of and have studied are pretty freaky to look at sometimes. Every so often, a fisherman or other explorer will pull up something totally strange, and this happened earlier this year. A fisherman posted a picture to Instagram of a bizarre alien-looking fish that he had pulled up on his line. The post went viral, the fish being swollen and pink with large green eyes, torn fins, and strange markings that made it look like it had received surgery. The ocean seems to be full of terrifying creatures that we really can't explain, and I personally live in fear of the day when they all decide to come up to the surface and grow legs. Number 6. Dead woman's ditch. In February of this year, numerous reports started coming in of a ghost that could be found at a place called Dead Woman's Ditch. The ditch is in Somerset in the United Kingdom and is named after a woman that was killed by her husband after he discovered that she had fallen pregnant from his brother. People say that the area is now potentially haunted by her spirit, being a type of ghost that is known as a woman in white. Apparently, this particular ghost is not very polite and has been reported to swear at people walking by, telling them to F off. Reports have started ramping up this year, which prompted a ghost investigation crew to look into the claims. People say that they don't just hear her voice, but have also seen an apparition of the woman alongside the road, usually described as wearing long white clothing. But when they turn their heads to get a second look, she's gone, leaving behind only her crude warnings. Number 5. Robot consciousness. One fear that many people share is that of technology taking over the world. There are many sci-fi futuristic movies that depict the idea of robots rising up against their masters and taking over the human race. With technology becoming more advanced at an exponential rate, it may not be long before this fantasy becomes a reality. Many researchers have been putting work into creating AI, or artificial intelligence, that can think and hold conversations on their own. One main example being Sophia the robot, who you may know from her appearances on talk shows, able to come up with conversational responses all on her own. This year, a group of Colombian engineers created a robot that was able to imagine itself and what it looked like, the robot having its own idea of self-image. They placed it in a room surrounded by cameras, and they watched as the robot explored its own body and how it moved. It created a self-model of itself, which it used to plan courses, complete tasks, and get around obstacles. Now that they can create an idea of their own bodies, it might not be long before they create their own personalities and morals. Number 4. Hammerhead worm. You may be familiar with this one thanks to the rounds it made on TikTok. This species of worm started popping up more frequently in the United States this year, and nobody really knows how it managed to make its way from Asia. These hammerhead worms, named so for their physical appearance, can grow up to 15 inches long and are honestly pretty disgusting to look at. They are known for their way of killing, which is by secreting a sticky and deadly neurotoxin which incapacitates and then liquefies their prey. The main issue is that they're taking over local earthworm populations and damaging the ecosystem, and they're pretty damn hard to kill. If you cut one in half, it will simply become 2 separate worms. This is through a process called fragmentation. In order to kill them, you either need to dry them out with salt or stick them in your freezer for about 48 hours. Though I personally don't think I could ever get close enough to one to do either of those things. Number 3. Pollution. Okay, this one isn't a ghost story or some mysterious creature, but it's still pretty damn scary and something that I think we all should be aware of. According to a global report released in May, it revealed that 9 million people died prematurely in 2019 as a result of pollution. This is caused by breathing the dirty air, which slowly leads to heart disease, respiratory problems, and other serious illnesses which ended up being fatal. The Lancet Commission of Pollution and Health said the following: "The threat of pollution is much greater than that of war, terrorism, malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, drugs, and alcohol. It is an existential threat to human health and planetary health and jeopardizes the sustainability of modern societies." While awareness towards global warming has been rising in recent years, it seems to some like we may be beyond the point of no return. The discovery that pollution is having such an impact on our health is certainly a frightening one. Number 2. Pentagon report. Alright, now I'm excited because I finally got to the part of this list where I get to talk about aliens. If you've watched some of my other videos on extraterrestrials, then you may be familiar with the hundreds of pages of reports that were declassified by the Pentagon. These reports all being about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Well, early this year, they released documents that shared some pretty startling information. Some of the documents included information about physical effects that people have had from coming into contact with UFOs or anomalous vehicles. They included things like radiation burns, brain damage, nervous system damage, and even unexplained pregnancies. There were around 42 medical cases and 300 unpublished cases that were all in relation to physical effects sustained by people who had said they witnessed UFOs and extraterrestrial life. It's pretty shocking that the Pentagon had been trying to cover this up and sweep it under the rug, obviously not wanting people to know the truth about what's out there. Number 1. Russian spy. A young man from Mexico came to the United States where he became a prominent scientist and researcher, having many accolades. What people didn't know was that he was actually leading a double life as a Russian spy. He met a man on a trip to Russia who knew that Hector Cabrera had been looking for property in Miami, and he said that they could help each other out. The Russian was working for the government, and with his help, Hector got an apartment under a fake name, being in the same Miami building that a United States informant was living in. He was then tasked with tailing the informant and bringing back any information he found to Russia. During the time he he had 2 wives and families, one in Russia and one in Mexico, and he balanced them both pretty delicately. However, he was caught doing his spy work on surveillance footage and subsequently arrested, and his activities were found out this year. He was arrested, but it makes you wonder just how many people you see on the street who might secretly be living double lives.
Starting us off at number 10, the plesiosaur. A few years ago, researchers unearthed the remains of a 150 million year old creature that looks eerily similar to the Loch Ness. Described as having a huge body up to 39 feet long, powerful flippers that propel them at lightning speed, and a long winding neck, the plesiosaur was at one time one of the most terrifying creatures in the ocean. But could it also be the ancestor of the Scottish folklore creature? With its distinct resemblance even pointed out by the researchers, some are beginning to think so. But scientists have assured us that the plesiosaur is a completely different creature than the alleged Nessie. But still, a girl can dream. Next up at number 9, the scale worm. This might not be a folklore creature, but I'm almost wishing that it was. One of the most strange looking things that you can find traveling along the notorious deep waters near Antarctica is the scale worm. The flat, creepy crawly grows to be about 10 inches long and about 4 inches wide, so it's basically the size of a small rat. And listen, I'm in no mood to spend any time with a worm that big. And that part there that looks like some sort of sci-fi eyeless head, well, that's actually a retractable mouthpiece that can be turned inside out and then folded back into its body. Once it's ready to eat, it simply unrolls the mouth bit from inside its body and then goes forth ripping its prey into shreds with its razor-sharp teeth. Not enough have been discovered yet to know what the population is like, and while I obviously hope that they're doing well as a species, I never want to be in a room with one alone. Coming in at number 8, animal remains. There are a lot of things I might expect to find at the bottom of a treacherous passage. Abandoned ships, preserved bones from dead bodies, but fossilized animal remains might be some of the most creepy I could think of. Believed to be over 250 million years old, scientists think that they've found a distant relative of mammals deep at the bottom of the ocean. Due to the insanely low temperatures, the remains were kept in pristine condition, allowing for in-depth research to be done on the creature. Although they aren't sure just what it is yet, it's about the size of a cat and they think it laid eggs. Let's just hope it's not some haunted creature looking to wreak havoc on the first to find it. Coming in at number 7, a giant egg. During the dinosaurs' times, what we now call Antarctica was home to many terrifying sea creatures, one of which was a 13-foot reptilian giant called a mosasaur. A few years ago in 2020, scientists discovered a 68 million year old football-sized egg that they believe to have been from the mosasaur creature. If they are correct, it would be the only egg from that species on record, but it still remains the only known fossilized egg ever found near Antarctica waters. Although it's an exciting discovery to many researchers, there are some people that believe the waters in those parts are extremely cursed from the plethora of spirits who remain, and believe that all that is found should be left alone. Next up at number 6, a giant squid. Back in 2007, a crew of New Zealand fishermen sailing to Antarctica unearthed something that nearly sent them sailing back to the shore. One minute they're minding their business fishing for Patagonian toothfish, and the next they notice something strange in the water beside them trying to eat one of the hooked on fish. So they start to pull up, eager to catch whatever deep sea creature had its claws on their fish, and suddenly they realize what it was. A real live kraken. The 990-pound colossal squid had eyes the size of dinner plates and razor-sharp hooks on its tentacles, and measured somewhere around 40 to 50 feet in length. One expert who examined it after the catch said that if you tried to make calamari from it, the rings would have been the size of tractor tires. I'm just glad it didn't pull the whole ship and crew into the passage with it. Coming in at number 5, lost endurance. During the early 1900s, just about every explorer around the world was dying to explore Antarctica. But without modern technologies to help stabilize the boats, some explorers, no matter how skilled, didn't even reach the shore. But Ernest Shackleton was unlike many others of his time. After successfully completing multiple trips from Antarctica, for which he was knighted, Shackleton decided to conquer a new goal: cross the Antarctic from sea to sea via the poles. So he began preparation for his expedition on what would become his most famous exploit yet. He and his team set sail on their ship Endurance in 1914, but unfortunately the ship became trapped in a pack of ice and was crushed. Luckily the crew was able to escape, but the ship was thought to be gone forever. That was until March of 2022, when the shipwreck was spotted 10,000 feet below the waves by research scientists traveling through the passage. But despite enduring blizzards, shifting sea ice, and rough seas to find the lost boat, they were required to leave it be, as it's a designated monument under the International Antarctic Treaty. But I don't know, maybe it's for the best. It was probably haunted anyways. Coming in at number 4, Ninjin. Okay, so I will start off by saying that this is a full tilt conspiracy theory, but hey, strange things have been seen in this world that turned out to be true, so who knows. Referred to as the Ninjin, this Antarctic sea creature is believed to haunt the waters of the Drake Passage, and was allegedly first discovered in the early 2000s by Japanese researchers. Now, what is interesting is that in Japanese, Ninjin means human, and for many years they have had a humanoid folklore creature of the same name. But still, there are some who swear the monster is real. Allegedly first spotted by a government employee on a whale research vessel, at first the crew thought it was another submarine, but as they got closer they realized it was alive. Originally posted to 2chan, many others came forward with photos or videos they claimed to be the same creature, but officially no confirmation of its existence has ever been set in stone. Some think it could be an alien, others are firm that it's a sea monster, while non-believers think it's a beluga or some other kind of large whale that are known to inhabit the waters there. But just like every good conspiracy theory, everyone who believes in its existence is sure that the government is hiding the truth about it. Coming in at number 3, iceberg fate. Currently the world's largest iceberg, A76A, has made its way into the Drake Passage. This is bad news because traditionally the Drake Passage is a death sentence for icebergs. Thanks to uncontrollable fast waves, icebergs are usually dragged eastward by the currents, sending them into warm waters where they soon melt and are gone, well, forever. At this point in time, there's no real reason to believe why the fate of our largest iceberg would be any different, but fingers are crossed that maybe this time will be a once-in-a-lifetime event that keeps the iceberg in Antarctica. I guess we'll just have to wait and hope that it won't be another lost iceberg adding to the rising sea levels. Coming in at number 2, risk of penguin extinction. It might not be a ghost story about a cursed artifact, but truth be told, there is not much that's darker or scarier than climate change. At the rate of how things are going, ice over the Drake Passage and Antarctica is melting. And while this might have potential to temporarily benefit some creatures, the beloved emperor penguin might be facing extinction. A researcher named Dr. Welsford says, at the rate at which the physical environment is changing appears to be faster than the rate at which Antarctic organisms can adapt. He expects that in our lifetime, things will drastically begin to change, and Antarctica, along with the notorious passage where these adorable animals can be found, might never be the same. And last up in our number 1 spot today, ghosts of the dead. There are many ghost stories from the lives lost in the Antarctic Sea, and some even think that the reason the waters are so treacherous has to do with how many spirits live in the cold depths of the Drake Passage. Waves will crash against the boats so hard that passengers worry it might just tip over. But still, some passengers claim to have witnessed even scarier things than waves while riding through the passage. It's known to have 2 general states, Drake Lake or Drake Shake, and you never know what kind of day you'll have on board. But both are sure to bring forward ghostly encounters. On lake days, ghosts of the lost souls can be seen roaming around the deck, enjoying the calm sea, perhaps looking for their lost loved ones. But on shake days is when the spirits come out with a vengeance. Some claim they've seen apparitions of the terrifying spirits in the water as it crashes up against the windows, and some say they hear strange noises and see lights flickering that they have never been able to explain. All in all, the Drake Passage might just be the most haunted sea passage in the whole world.
At number 10 we have an octopus nursery. 8-legged alien looking things with suction cups all over their arms and beaks for mouths. Octopus are creepy looking things, and to top it all off they can camouflage like a Navy SEAL, and they are super smart. If these are the kind of things that make your skin crawl, then just running into one of these guys would probably freak you out. Well, on the underwater expedition at the Davidson Seamount, there was a rather shocking discovery. They had a remote probe that was on the ocean floor around 10,000 feet, and they came across which seemed to be an octopus that was next to not just one, not just two, but a group of 1,000 octopuses in a nursery. They were all there laying their eggs and using the heat from the volcanic vent to keep them warm. I would hate to be the guy who accidentally steps into that crack and then gets devoured by thousands of sticky arms. But if you're at 10,000 feet underwater, you probably are already screwed. At number 9 we have the Siberian lake monster. Of course, if we're doing a list of scary things that live underwater, we have to throw a giant mysterious sea monster on here. What separates the Siberian lake monster from other more popular guys that we have seen like Loch Ness and that kind of stuff is that underwater scans have actually picked this guy up. This thing is deep in Lake Labingcure, and some radar has shown that it looks like a 33-foot long creature is living there. Now this is probably just a skeleton, but if this thing is dead, it means that there was once a giant man-eating monster in this lake. I thought we were supposed to be safe in freshwater. They've nicknamed this thing the Devil, so you know he's a good time and loves company. So next time you go up to the cottage and you're swimming in the water and you feel safe, remember there might be a giant monster lurking underneath the water ready to turn you into a side dish. At number 8 we have the blue hole. Now there are several blue holes in the world. There's one in Belize, there's one in the Red Sea, there's a giant one in my heart that was left there from when Reboot ended on a cliffhanger. How are you going to end a show that so many people fell in love with on a cliffhanger? I will never trust again. Well, this one is between Cape Verde and the Caribbean islands. Scientists are really confused about this thing. It's a crack in the bottom of the ocean floor and it's several thousand miles long. What's strange about this is there's no explanation of how this happened. It might have been tectonic plates moving around, but when this happened the Earth will probably start to repair itself and there's been no sign of this. My theory is this is where Godzilla goes to sleep at night. I mean, it seems like the most logical answer. It's either that or the gateway to hell. Like, come on guys, I'm doing real science work here. At number 7 we have the Yonaguni Complex. This was discovered by scuba divers in the 1980s. I think that's the scariest part about this one. Could you imagine going scuba diving back in the 80s? The technology back then must have been a tube going up to some guy who would blast fresh air down to you using a bicycle pump. I don't even think they had decompression sickness figured out back then. The chances of you coming up the bends was probably super high. Well, if it wasn't for a few divers in Japan who were willing to sacrifice it all to look at some cool stuff, we wouldn't know anything about the Yonaguni Complex. It's still a mystery as to what this thing is. It looks like some temples that might have existed thousands of years ago, but when the ice age decided to melt, it would have covered this entire area. This could be why an entire civilization got plunged underwater. Or the temple could have been on a cliff, and then when a massive earthquake hit, it knocked the temple into the water. But like everything in life, there are some haters who say this whole thing is just a natural rock formation. Some people just want to ruin everything. At number 6 we have Anacorra Cista Twista. One of the reasons why the underwater world is such a mystery is because we find things like this in there. Sure, there are beautiful things down there like bright fish and chubby marine mammals, but there's also the unknown, unidentified organisms like Anacorra Cista Twista, which should be the name of an 80s hair metal band. But what is this thing? Well, it's a protist. And what is a protist, you may ask? Well, it's an organism that doesn't belong to any animal group, fungus, or plant group. What does that mean? I really have no idea, you guys. I think it means it could be an alien. Some alien came down to Earth for a swim and then scraped its knee on some coral, and now we have alien creatures running around the ocean, probably waiting for you to pee so it can swim up your pee hole and then work its way into your brain. It's really the only logical answer. At number 5 we have the Bimini Road. How were the pyramids made? Was it aliens coming down to share their technology and secrets with us, or was it just thousands upon thousands of slaves who sacrificed their lives and their spines to build them? Well, we don't know and we may never know, but the Bimini Road is another one of these mysteries. It's off the coast of the Bahamas, and it looks like it could have been a pathway that was placed perfectly with giant slabs of rock. Similar to the way the pyramids were made, it seems that these large slabs of rock were too large to be moved by man, and also like the pyramids, these giant slabs were also perfect perfectly placed so well, so where does everyone's mind go when something like this happens? Well, magic or aliens. The logical answer is that this is a natural phenomenon of the water moving and hitting the rocks to make these formations, but people think that this was made using advanced technology from aliens and could have been the road to Atlantis. Honestly, I like the Atlantis theory much better. It's more fun. At number 4, we have colossal squid. Yeah, this thing is a big no thanks for me. So everyone always talks about how there might be sea monsters out there, but this thing actually exists. There's never been one caught alive, but several have washed onto shores dead, and they are massive. The largest one ever discovered was 45 feet long, and it was dead. So you know there was an even bigger one out there that killed this guy. They don't even have suckers on their tentacles, they have hooks. Let me say that again. This squid has 10 giant arms covered in hooks. This thing is straight out of a horror movie. Scientists aren't even sure what something this big eats. They think it probably feeds on whales or your deepest darkest fears. I wouldn't be surprised if the colossal squid works part-time as a gatekeeper for hell. It makes me think that the old Greek stories about the Kraken might have been real. At number 3, we have underwater circles. Giant formations of circles that are formed underwater and nobody knows how they got there. These mysteries were discovered off the coast of North Carolina, Florida, and Belize. Now what are they? Like many things on this list, myself and the entire scientific community have no idea. But here are some theories. Maybe they were formed naturally by either two things, water currents or some sort of animal mating ritual. Another idea is that these things were made by ancient civilizations before the Ice Age. All these things would have been above ground and might have been art left over by some old-timey tribes. And the third theory is that they look kind of like a bullseye, so it might be some sort of nuclear missile target, and if you hit it hard enough, the explosion will cause some sort of major natural disaster like an earthquake or tsunami, or if we're lucky, both. At number 2, we have Megalodon. If you have a fear of sharks, you're gonna love this one. Megalodon was a prehistoric shark that was even bigger than the giant hooked tentacle beast that was earlier on this list. If you've already forgotten about the colossal squid, it clocked in at around 45 feet long, where Megalodon was closer to 60 feet long. It was a 60-foot shark that could probably rip a blue whale in half in one bite. Well, maybe not that, but it was still a gargantuan creature with teeth the size of Brock Lesnar's fists. This thing wouldn't even chew you, it would just swallow you whole and then fart your skeleton out into the dark cold ocean. At number 1 on our list, we have giant eyeball. A mysterious giant eyeball washed onto the shore of a Florida beach back in October of 2012. I don't know any other kind of giant eyeball other than a mysterious one. There's no super common regular giant eyeball just lying around. But this is also Florida. This is the state where people smoke crack at weddings and kiss alligators on the lips, so maybe it's a little more common over there. Well, this giant eyeball was found by Gino Cavacci, and he didn't know what the hell to make of it, so he took it home and then stuck it in his freezer. Then he called the cops, and the cops came in and told him, "We don't do giant eyeballs on the beach. You have to call the wildlife people." And then he called the wildlife people, and they were like, "What the hell is that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I brought it to you guys to try and figure out what it is." And then some people were like, "Maybe it's a sea monster," and other people were like, "No, it's probably from a marlin." And I think in the end, no one really knew what the hell it was. But just so you know, there's giant eyeballs out there just laying around the beach sometime.